Hello, everybody. We awake? Everybody? So, before I served as the community organizer, I actually was a PE teacher. So, what I'm going to make everybody do right now is stand up. Let's do some exercises. You've been sitting there forever. Yeah, come on. Everybody stand up. No, that's too bad. We need to get some blood circulation. Yeah, burpees time. Burpees, everybody. No, I'm totally joking. We're going to start with just some blood flow into our arms. So let's do some arm circles real quick. Arm circles going forward. We call these little itty bitty baby circles. The kindergartners love this. All right, and then we go up to the bigger ones. There we go. Good. Now let's switch it to the backstroke. All right. And then we just shake it out. Hug yourself. A lot of love for everybody. All right. And then just shake it out. One more. Feet together, bend down, touch your toes. Just stretch, hold it down. Oh, man. Some of us have some tighter shirts on. All right, good. We good? Shake out those legs. We got some good blood flow. All right, I won't make you do any more. We could get into burpees, some planks. Some of us need some core workout more than others. No? All right. No, but as Jen said, my name is Stephen Kodur. If you recognize my face, it's because you've seen me on Zoom or in one of your student body meetings before. I have served as, I worked my way through the SSCCC. I served as a delegate. Went into Regional Affairs Director of Region 5, which was in the Central Valley, which is where I'm living. And then also last year I served as the President of the Student Senate, which was a lot of fun, very rewarding experience. If you just recognize my name, it's probably because you're either a student trustee or a student body president or an advisor, because I'm the one that's blowing up your emails with resources that you could use, like voter registration and, hey, get me a delegate, please, would be awesome. So, yeah, I'm just happy to be here. I get the awesome privilege of going through meeting management. So all of you as student body individuals, student leaders, are either a part of a meeting or you're chairing a meeting. You serve on a committee, you serve in your student body association, doesn't matter, you are there. So I'm going to go over some tips and tricks, some rules that guideline. I'm not going to go deep into Brown Act or parliamentary procedure. If you wanted that, you're a day late because I did that presentation yesterday. All right, so if you want to get into that, that is going to be uploaded on our YouTube. I went through a lot of like the new guidelines that are in the Brown Act. I will go through some of that today, but yeah. So we're gonna get into meeting management. What does it mean, to have a meeting? Your agendas, a little bit of the Brown Act, and then chairing a meeting. So let's get into it. First off, the agenda. In order to have a meeting, you need to have an agenda, right? We need to go through what is our basic outline of what we're going to do for that day. You're going to see a lot of like the templates from the SSCCC agendas, because that's what I've worked with a lot. Everyone throws their own little flair on it. But here, agendas are really made to provide an outline of what's going to happen in that meeting, right? We're going to walk through these steps. And it's not just for you. It's for the public. It's for everybody else that is coming into that meeting to be able to know what they are going to get themselves into. And really, the public needs to know what you're doing, because you are elected officials, and they are the ones that elected you. So they want to know what you're going to be getting into, because that means to them whether or not they want to attend that meeting. Maybe you're about to approve a budget of $50,000, and that might affect them in some way. So they might want to come in and say their 2 cents on how you should spend that money. That's why the agenda is there. It tells them exactly what you're going to get into. So you do not want to deviate from what your agenda says, right? Because that's where you get into some regulations that'll get you in trouble. But it really outlines the meeting. Make sure you add some time limits to your agenda items. That's always a good practice. You don't want one item to run for like 2 hours and the next one to be 2 minutes, right? We want to make sure that we are, really delegating our time wisely while we're in there. And if there's no time limit, that item can literally last forever. If you put no time limit on there, it could have been an item that could have lasted just for 20 minutes, and and instead you're going into debate where everybody's saying the exact same thing and it just keeps going on and no one's calling the question. So make sure you throw some time limits on there. At the top of your agenda, make sure that you are putting, your the date. Make sure that's all correct. People don't like to see an incorrect agenda. It says it's September 21st, and you're actually meeting on the 24th, and it's all wrong. So, overview of the agenda. These are some of the things that you would want to put on your agenda. First off, call-in information. Right, a lot of us are using Zoom right now. If it's in person, make sure you're putting the address of where you're going to be at. The public notice, notice pursuant to action, whatever. That whole little clause is usually good to put at the top of your agenda. Your call to order. You have a roll call usually on the agenda. There's amendments to the agenda. Usually a time for you to change up the agenda. I highly, highly encourage you not to use that because, like I said, you do not want to deviate from what that agenda is telling the public that you're going to be speaking on for that day. Approval of the minutes, public comment has to be on there. Do not leave that out. The public has to have a time to be able to talk to you about what you're getting yourself into. Special orders, some people put that on, some people don't. Reports for your members. And then you always have to have business, old business, new business, whatever it is that you're going to be doing. Communications from the floor, that's usually a time. Some people substitute that for reports. Communications from the floor is different from public comment. Public comment is for people outside of your organization to speak. Communications from the floor are those elected that are part of that body to be able to speak. All right, and then your adjournment, the best time of every meeting, right? All right, call-in information, public notice. As you can see here, this is what I was talking about, the pursuant to government code, whatever, supplemental material, all of this, distributed 72 hours ahead of time. Make sure it has your current Zoom links. I've seen so many times people blowing up other people's phones saying, hey, the Zoom link on the agenda is not correct. How do I get in? Right? So you need to have that access for the members of the public and even your officers to be able to get in. Make sure that's correct. Public access is required. So right now, if you are doing Zoom, you need to make sure that you are putting that Zoom link out there so that way the members of the public can access that. All right, that is a requirement. It has to be there. If it's in person, you need to be able to put exactly what room number you're in so that way the public can get to it. Links to supplemental material. Link your documents. That's huge. Hyperlinks are great when it comes to agendas because they can just click on it. Boom, it goes to maybe a Google Drive or some of you are using Board Docs. Lucky. Board Docs is like very expensive, and if your college is paying for that, that's awesome because it's really well laid out for all of your documents. And definitely proofread the sections. Like proofreading your agenda is huge. I don't know how many times I've read through, seen so many typos, seen so many just discrepancies with what's on the agenda and what's being held. So that's where you find the most typos. Make sure the correct meeting is being referenced. Check for the correct date, time, and email. Y'all should know that. All right. Order of business. So this is how we get started with the meeting. The order of business, this is the very, very beginning of every meeting. Usually the following groups of items are necessary for the beginning of the meeting. One is the call to order. You can't start a meeting unless it's called to order, right? The chair says I call this meeting to order at such and such a time. Great, the meeting's going to start. It hasn't started yet. Why not? Because we need to get into roll call. We need to establish a quorum because if we do not get a quorum, we cannot meet. All right, there's so many times that people will still go through their meeting even though they only have 3 members there. And it's like you cannot do that if it is not the quorum of your members. And what is quorum? Anybody?
50 plus 1.
Thank you. 50% of your elected leaders plus 1, or if you're voting leaders plus 1. All right. So if you have 8 members that are voting members, how many do you need to get quorum? Math lesson, real quick. Thank you. If it is 9, what is it? It's still 5. All right. Good. We're a little slow today. It's all right. It's all right. So some of y'all need to go re-up on that coffee real quick. So roll call. You check who's present. Quorum is established. Great. Let's keep going. Quorum's not established. No business can be had. Can you still talk?
Yes.
Yes. all right? You cannot talk actionable items. Anything that you are going to take action on in a future meeting, you cannot talk about. If there are any sorts of announcements, maybe an informational item, someone like a vice president of student services just wanted to come in and give you a heads up about something that's going on, great. If it's going to take action later on in life, do not talk about it. That's where you're going to get yourself into some trouble, or could get yourself into some trouble. All right? So great, we've established quorum. Now we have to approve the agenda. We have to approve what we're going to get into for that day. This is a procedural item, does not need a roll call vote. A lot of people go into, all right, let's take a motion, let's go through this. With the new guidelines with Brown Act and all of parliamentary procedure, this is a procedural item. So all you need is, are there any objections to the agenda as it's presented? No? Perfect, let's move on. That's it. That's all you need. Any procedural item can take it by consensus. You can take that by consensus. So approval of the agenda, approval of the minutes, those are both procedural items. You have to get through those. You do not need a roll call vote. You don't need to go through any of that. It's just, hey, anyone object? No? Great, let's move on. All right? Like I said, the agenda should not be changed. You cannot add items in there. That's a Brown Act violation. You don't want to get into that. Do not add something in. Make it an emergency meeting if you really have to, like the next day, because emergency meetings only need 24-hour notice. But do not add stuff to your agenda. That's murky water right there. Approval of the minutes. Those are minutes from your previous meeting. Sometimes you'll have a stockpile of meetings that you just haven't approved the minutes from yet. Another procedural item. Anybody have any objections? I see a lot of people go through and read them all. That's your homework, right? You're supposed to be reading that before you get into your meeting. So there's no need for you to go through that. Anyone have any objections to approving the minutes? No? Great, let's move on. Public comment. It is essential for the public to be able to speak to your body. New AB 361, that's the new Brown Act regulations, makes it so that you have to allow public comment in real time. That means a lot of the boards of trustees that are out there right now are saying you must submit your public comment before this time and then we'll read it. That is no longer allowed. You have to give the public a chance to provide real-time public comment. So it's great. If you want to get public comment and get it beforehand, great. Do that as a student body association. Awesome. But you still need to allow anyone that's on that call or in that room to be able to provide a real-time public comment. So that's new regulations that just was approved September 16th, and it was approved with urgency, which means that it goes into effect right when he signed it, right when the governor signed it. It doesn't go in on January 1st. All right? All right, so usually the next section, I go through standing items, reports, special orders, something along those lines. Standing items are usually recurring items that you talk about every time. Usually something around a roundtable discussion. When I was president, I had an executive roundtable. When you'd have an executive committee, I would really encourage just a roundtable discussion, just to hash some things out, maybe talk about the other things that you need to put on the agenda for next time. This is not a time for action. This is only a time to talk things out. Right? Let's have a discussion. Is there anything that's going on that we need to be aware of? Maybe that's happening on campus, some things that we need to know for the future. COVID-19 update, maybe a legislative update. Those are some recurring items. Now, here's one that needs to be put on there. AB 361 just was approved, like I said. AB 361 says that in a state of emergency, if the state of emergency lasts more than 30 days, you as an organization need to put an action item to approve meeting online every 30 days. So on your agendas, you need to approve the fact that you want to still meet online if you are meeting online. All right, I'll go through some more of those regulations later. So right now, you need to start having a standing item that makes you approve the fact that you want to stay online. And the reasons for you staying online have to either be that state and local officials are either requiring or pushing social distancing or mask mandates, or you take action that it is a health risk to be able to meet in person. So one of those two things need to happen. You need to talk about it, and then you need to take action to say, hey, I think we still need to stay online. If it is a majority vote, boom, that's great. But it has to happen every 30 days. That is part of AB 361. Reports, usually we put these on every agenda. It's time for your board members to update your student body, sorry I left region on there, for their work, as well as anything else that's going on in your organization, right? Maybe it's the time for the ICC president to talk about what's going on in ICC. Your VP of External Affairs is sitting on the region board, so maybe it's time for them to come and say what the SSCCC is up to, or your student trustee to talk about what's going on at the Board of Trustees meeting. It's a great time. I wouldn't leave that for a communications to the floor. I really like to see reports on the agenda just because there's usually a lot more to talk about. And communications from the floor usually has a time limit of about 1 to 2 minutes. Special orders, these are urgent items that have been requested to be addressed first. Sometimes you might have a business item that you're saying, hey, you know what, I really want to address this before we do anything else. You can take action to move that up to special orders. Usually we put special orders as maybe a vice president instructions coming in to give an enrollment update or something along those lines. You can put those into special orders so that they occur before everything else happens. All right, it requires a 2/3 vote to move any item to special orders. Just a heads up there. All right, business. There's two types of business. There's old business, there's new business. Old business is any runover item that you didn't finish from your last meeting. All right, you tabled an item, you said, well, hey, we're gonna postpone this to the next meeting. Great, you can leave that as old business. It doesn't have to come as a new agenda item request. New business is anything new that's being presented for the first time. This is where you have all of your action. Business is for action, all right? So usually you want to, when you're formulating an agenda item, you want a short title. Don't make it too long. You want a description of what you're going to talk about, an indication whether it's discussion or action. Because if you do not put that you're taking action on that item, you cannot take action on that item. It needs to be told to the public that you are taking action for a specific purpose. All right, so make sure that you know if it's a discussion or action item. Supplemental documents, I usually like to link just straight whatever the document is, even though I linked it at the beginning to like the whole folder. I like to link to whatever that specific item is. If you have a presenter, I would put a presenter, and then definitely, like I said earlier, a time limit. All right, make sure that in your business item, if it is a monetary like budget that you're approving, you need to put the exact dollar amount that you are approving for. If you do not have that, you cannot take action on that, because the public needs to know how much you're spending. Because if I'm a public member and I see approving a budget, I don't know if I want to go to that meeting or not. But if I see approving a budget for $150,000, I might be in that meeting real quick. If I see it for $15, I might be like, all right, you guys are funny. Go for it, right? So make sure that you have that exact dollar amount, so that way the public knows whether or not to be a part of your meeting or not. All right, so here's 3 key Brown Act issues. 1, agendas must be available 72 hours in advance of the meeting. 72 hours is also known as what? Wrong, it's 72 hours, because if it was 3 days, if I posted an agenda on Monday for a Thursday meeting, that does not mean that I'm in the clear. I need to make sure that if my agenda, or if my meeting is Thursday at 4 o'clock, I need to post it before Monday at 4 o'clock. It is not good that I just posted on Monday. It is not 3 days, it is 72 hours. So I always recommend do it longer than 72 hours prior. But thanks for that. It needs to be posted so the public can see it. A lot of student body associations post it on their door. If that door is locked at night, that is not okay, because the public cannot access that information. You need to put up a bulletin board outside somewhere where they can actually access that information at any time. All right? So it needs to be posted in an accessible location, 72 hours. If you have a website, it has to be posted on your website. That is part of a Brown Act issue. All right? If you have a website for your student body association, it has to be posted on your website also, not just posted physically. Now, agendas and supplemental material must also be easily accessible. Like I said, hyperlinks are your friend. They need to be accessible when you have the agendas out. And the meetings must be open to the public, your Zoom and your physical location. Before COVID, no matter where any voting member was at, that place needed to have a posted agenda and accessible to the public. So that means if you were home and you had put on the agenda that you were going to be accessing the meeting from your house would have had to have been available for any member of the public to be able to come to. Now, because of COVID, it's a little bit different, but once the state of emergency goes away, you have to go back to that. So that means if you were accessing a meeting at Starbucks, the agenda has to be posted 72 hours in advance at that Starbucks, and the Starbucks must be available for the public to come in and access. If you're using your computer, they have to use your computer also. All right? It has to be open to the public to be able to utilize. All right? So that's something that we're going to get into. Once the state of emergency goes away, that's something you're going to have to access again. So if you're meeting in person, great. Don't have to worry about anything else. But if a member that is a voting member is accessing that meeting somewhere else, it needs to be on your agenda. So you can't have someone driving into your meeting and trying to access the meeting and saying they're present. They are not present if they are not where they're supposed to be at when that meeting starts. That make sense? Everybody good? All right, so I'll go over a couple key new provisions that were in AB 361. So like I said, one was it allows teleconferencing, all right, without the normal requirements because we're in a state of emergency. And it's only because state or local officials have imposed or recommended measures to promote social distancing, or your legislative body, which is your student body association, for the purpose of determining by a majority vote that the meeting in person would present imminent risks. So you can have a teleconference meeting to decide that you want to have teleconference meetings. All right? So that's the first one. Now, the other one is that you, as the legislative body, your student body association, determine by a majority vote that the meeting in person would present imminent risks to health or safety of the attendees. So like I said earlier, 30 days, within every 30 days, you have to take action by a majority vote to say that your meetings, if they were held in person, would present a risk to everybody else. All right? Public comment, like I said, must be available in real time. AB 361 applies for any state of emergency. So after this state of emergency, if the governor declares another state of emergency for a different reason, AB 361 comes back into play. So you can start teleconferencing again and make that your only mode of meeting. All right? The other provision, if the state of emergency, like I said, remains for 30 days, you have to reconsider every 30 days the circumstance of that emergency. You need to declare in your majority vote, this is what you need to say, that the state of emergency continues to directly impact the ability of your members to meet in person, safely in person, or you need to declare that your state or your local officials continue to impose or recommend social distancing measures. So one of those two things, you need to either say it is a risk for our members to attend, or we take action to say there is social distancing being held by our local, whatever it is, the county, whatever it is. They're saying that, so we're taking action to say that we need to stay online. All right? And the best way to do this, like I said earlier, have a standing item. And just revisit this at each of your meetings. All right, acceptable communication. Under Brown Act, you should not have group chats. Group chats that talk about any sort of business item. If I ask you how your day was, great. Hey, Jack, you having a good time? Yeah. Hey, you know what? I think student engagement's really lacking. What if we started doing an event? Boom. If we start to talk about any item that might end up on our agenda, we are breaking Brown Act. So if you want to ask them how their classes was, great. Once you start to hear what could be an agenda item in the future, stop it, because that's where you can get in trouble. If you don't think that you can keep that away from your group chats, don't have one. All right? So If they begin discussing any business that's illegal under the Brown Act, it cannot exist. Communications between a majority of members is public record. So if you do have a group chat, it should be able to be accessed by anybody if a majority of your members are there. So that means Discord, Facebook chats, that anyone can ask for those records if a majority of your members are there. All right, serial meetings. One of the things that I've seen people do in the past that you want to stay away from is if I go and I start talking to the other voting members of the Student Body Association, and I talk to, say, Jack, and I say, hey, Jack, we're going to have this item on the agenda. How do you feel about it? And we talk about the item. Then I go to Jen, and I talk to her about the same exact item, and then I start bringing in what Jack told me. That's like the three of us just had a conversation. And if I do it again to Gian, boom, the four of us just had a conversation. Not just me and Gian. The four of us actually had a conversation because I had a conversation. They call that the spoken wheel. All right? Do not do that. That is not okay. Use your emails cautiously. If you think that you might be violating a Brown Act, it's probably best not to do it. Right? That's why you have the roundtable discussions, do stuff like that where it's open, it's public, people can hear what you're talking about, because all this back chatter can really get you into some trouble. All right, chairing your meeting. I like to sit on the Iron Throne when I chair my meetings. I don't know about y'all. But all right, running your meetings most effectively. As the chair, you should always remain impartial. That means don't have an opinion. You really don't want to, because then you can actually, moderate how the discussion goes. And it should be open, it should be impartial. Someone else can have an opinion, and we want to get into debate, just not with you. That's why you're the chair. You're supposed to facilitate the debate, not encounter the debate. So this means don't participate in the debate between the members of your meeting or dictate in the direction of your conversation. I've seen so many times a chair hear from another individual and say, well, I disagree with that. Don't have an opinion. Let the other members have that opinion. You're usually not a voting member. If you are a voting member, it's a little bit different. All right? But most presidents are not a voting member, or whoever the person is, if it's your vice president because you sit on the legislative the legislative body with your senators, you usually don't have a vote. So do not go into discussion yourself. You just facilitate the debate. Your job is to ensure that the debate remains respectful. One of the things is, when people are debating, we are debating the chair, not each other, right? If I'm a pro, Jack is a con, I do not say, Jack, you are wrong. I cannot believe you said that. That is horrible. I think of you as a lesser human now. No, I do not say that. If I wanted to say that, I would say, Chair, I do not think that Jack was right. I think he's a horrible human being for thinking about that. All right? That is how I direct my conversation, my debate. It goes through the chair, not to each other. We debate the topic with the chair, not with each other. All right? So that's why the last ones here, I would consider establishing some community agreements. If you want some examples, take a look at the SSCCC. We have it as a consent item every agenda. There's a list of community agreements. Debate the topic, not the person. What are some of the other ones? It's like you use affirmative words. Just a lot of just different kind of guidelines to how your meeting should be run. I would encourage each of you to have that and just leave it on your consent agenda, and just have it as your guiding principles while you're in a meeting. So that way, you just don't have a leader that just runs rogue and just starts yelling profanities at the top of their lungs just because they didn't like what happened. All right? Meeting minutes, this is huge because this is your institutional memory. This is how I can go back 5+ years and know what the previous president said on certain legislation or on any other topic. Make sure you appoint somebody. Usually you have a secretary in your student body association. If the secretary is absent, don't forget to give somebody the minutes. And it would be super hard for you to do it. You can't really run the meeting effectively. Just appoint somebody. Make sure that they're taking the minutes. Main motions are vital to the minutes. Seconds are not. All right? So-and-so moved. It was seconded. All right? So-and-so moved that we adopt, a $50,000 budget, and it's attached. The vote record the maker, second's not necessary. Amendments change the motion, so they need to be recorded whether they pass or fail, right? So if any amendment is said, that is a motion. I move to amend the motion by striking X and inserting Y. That's a motion. Whether it passes or fails, it needs to be in the minutes. So that way, again, we know institutional memory, what kind of opposition there was, what kind of change might have been had. Supplemental discussion is really, it's for future reference and context. It could be provided. It does not need to be in conversation format, right? I see a lot of people, it's like, VPLA said this, VPF said this, and you really just say what the conversation was having, all right, during that time. So that way we have a record of, so like this remark was made or the discussion went in this direction. So that way we know, and you can continue to keep the minutes and actually provide valuable insight for those that are looking at it later. Some tips and tricks: stick to your agenda, stick to your time limits for your agenda items. Don't overpack your agenda with items. I've seen some agendas that are like 6 pages long, and that's when you lose your leaders for the day, right? That all of a sudden there's like 4 absences. Make sure that you don't overpack it. I mean, you really want to get the substance in there, but if it's too long, it's too drawn out, you could really lose some people at the end, and then you're not really giving your students the service that they need, right? Because you're just kind of trying to fly through it at the end. Make your agenda items worthwhile, productive. Capture everybody's attention with some of the things that you're going to do, all right? And then consider sending your agenda item earlier than the 72 hours. Like I said, you don't want to run into that where you're like, oh, shoot, I forgot to post it, but it's still Monday, and it's like half an hour late. Don't want to do that. Questions? Any questions? Nobody? We tried to run through that kind of fast. Good. Are there any questions online? I hope not. Jen? Questions? Questions online? Anybody? Everyone got the new regulations though? AB 361. Those are some things that you really need to take to heart. Make sure that you're sticking to those. Tell your boards of trustees. No, we're good. Perfect. Tell your boards of trustees. Tell your academic senates. Whoever it is, get the word out. Because like I said, it literally was just passed 2 weeks ago. So these regulations are going into effect now. And you want to be ahead of time. Yeah. Oh, we do? All right, perfect. I'll see if I have a couple answers. Are we allowed to do breakout sessions in Zoom? I'm guessing this is during a meeting. I would say yes, if they are accessible to the public also. Because the only time that you would limit a breakout session to no public access would be a closed session. And really in SBAs, you probably don't have closed sessions all that often. It's usually personnel issues. You don't really have staff. So I would say yes, but make sure that it is open and available to the public to do. I've seen people do like icebreakers, cool. I would not do breakouts that are to discuss action items. So if it's something informational, you want to talk about something, great. If it's action items, I don't think the public can access all the breakouts at one time, so I would stay away from that. And definitely, I'm not a legal opinion, but that's how I would interpret Brown Act from what I've read. Another one? Okay. Ooh, that's a sticky subject, right? Because one, it is not really accessible to everybody, right? If you are not online, say you're in person, you're doing a hybrid meeting, you can't really see this chat. Say you had a hard of hearing or a blind person that called into your meeting, can they access that chat? I would say no. I like to keep chats disabled during my meetings and utilize other features. So that's just my encouragement, my recommendation. Is that it? Yep, keep going. Reel them out, because we're getting close. 361.
What about having to pass a resolution in that effect? We were told that we have to pass a resolution saying that we would meet online until further notice, aka indefinitely until something changes.
Yes, so as I said, the regulation states that you must revisit it every 30 days. So if you write a resolution, great. Put that resolution as a standing item to ratify it every 30 days. All right, so that way you stay online. But even though you have a resolution to stay online, once the governor's state of emergency goes away, if you stay online, those online presences are now access points once the emergency goes away. So if that means you're accessing from your home, Starbucks, Domino's, doesn't matter, all of those places need to have a posted agenda and be accessible to the public. Go ahead. No, so what would happen is you're not meeting for those 30 days, so you wouldn't have to come, but the next time that you come back, you would have to have that meeting. Remember, one of the things that I said is you can hold a teleconference meeting to take a vote to stay online. So that's one of the things you can do. So you're gone for 30 days, great. When you have that next meeting, you just need to make sure that that's an agenda item when you come back. Does that make sense? No, it does not. Oh, sorry. So the question was winter break. Winter break's longer than 30 days. I'm not going to be meeting for 30 days. So, do I have to hold a special meeting just to be able to continue going online? Then the answer would be no, because one of the provisions in AB 361 is that your meeting can be held through teleconference in order to approve meeting online. So when you come back, your first meeting, the first agenda item, which should be meeting online, and just ratifying that again. Yes. So the question is about the 30 days, right? So yes, it does. So the question is, does it still apply if you're hybrid? Yes, because some of your members are online, so technically they should be access points for members of the public to be able to come. So you would need to, every 30 days, take a motion to extend meeting online so that those don't have to be access points, so that members of the public don't show up at somebody's house to access that meeting. Does that make sense? We good? Does that make sense? Go. If you're completely in person, great. Yes. So that's the thing. This is AB 361 is to allow you to meet online. If you're meeting in person, great. You don't have to abide by AB 361, right? Because you're meeting in person. You just have to abide by whatever your county is saying, whatever regulations are in place. If you have to social distance, if you have to wear a mask, whatever your school site is saying. What I'm saying is, if you want to continue doing online meetings, you have to, every 30 days, take a motion to continue online meetings. Does that make sense? Okay. And the same for hybrid, because hybrid is an online meeting. You're teleconferencing some people in. Yes. Clema, did you have one?
There was a question online, and I think you probably answered it.
No problem.
But it was, so if a voting member is going to be attending virtually, I think they said two in-person, at an in-person meeting, does that need
If,
than hybrid.
yeah, so if a voting member is meeting virtually, does that need to be publicly noticed? If they are saying right now during COVID, because of AB 361, it does not, right? Because you are teleconferencing, you need to just every 30 days make the motion to allow for online meetings. If after COVID, yes, any voting member needs to be they need to say where they're going to be accessing that meeting at. And if they are not in that location, they are not present for that meeting. So that means if I am driving into where I'm supposed to be, I am not present, I do not count towards quorum. All right? Now during COVID though, AB 361, you do not have to say where you were at. You just need to be a part of that meeting, but every 30 days you need to take action to be able to extend your teleconferencing meetings.
One more question.
Okay.
Does the 72-hour posting rule include weekends or needs to be during the college business hours?
So yes, it does include weekends, so that does work. So if I posted my meetings on Monday, I post on Friday, that's great. If my meeting is, say, on a Tuesday, and I need to post on Saturday, as long as the posting is where, at the physical location, accessible to the public, good. But if you can't get it online, not good, right? If you have if you have an official website for your student body association, that means if your college placed it as one of the tabs on their website, you need to be able to put your agenda there also. And if that means on a weekend that you can't get a hold of whoever's accessing that website to be able to put it up, that does not comply with Brown Act. Did I restate that question? I don't know if I restated it. It's in the chat though, right? So, is there another question? I feel like the question master right now. That's great. Yes.
Does the 72-hour posting include weekends or needs to be during the college business hours?
Okay. So the question was, does the 72 hours apply to weekends or during college business hours? And the response that I just had was in response to that question. Thank you. I didn't know if I had restated that. Are we good? Oh, all right.
If my computer's a personal computer, do I still have to allow a member from the public to access it? If that's the case, do I need to have a separate device that can be accessed by the public? If so, who pays for the public device?
So however you are accessing that meeting is how the public gets to access that meeting. So if you were at a coffee shop and you posted your agenda at the coffee shop because that's where you're going to be, this is post-COVID, right? Because teleconferencing, you don't need to say where you're at right now during COVID. Once the state of emergency is gone, though, and you are at, a pizza place, wherever you are, just as long as it was posted, you could be there. But the public can access that. The public does not have to pay for a device. The public can come in and access your device. So however you are accessing that meeting, they can access that meeting because they are allowed to give public comment. They are allowed to listen in on any agenda items. And I'm sorry I did not restate that question again. So that was if the public is accessing your remote location, do they get to use your device? And the answer is yes. In a post-COVID world, so post-pandemic, post-state of emergency. Yes? Yes, because none of your voting members, okay, so great, let me restate the question. All right, so post-COVID, post a state of emergency at all, you start meeting completely in person. You want to allow a Zoom link. I encourage you to allow a Zoom link for members of the public, all right? If no voting member is accessing through Zoom from the outside at a different remote location, you do not need to, have a different device set up anywhere else. You just provide a Zoom link, they can call in. Your Zoom device is there in person where you're at, where you're having that meeting, all right? So that you don't have to, set up somewhere else. But if a member of your voting body is somewhere else, then the public can access wherever they are at. And it has to be put on the agenda where they're going to be at, because that is another location that you are holding that meeting at. Got it? Yes. Whew. Should have gotten 30 minutes. I can't hear that, sorry. I'll repeat.
Doesn't that violate FERPA, posting student information?
It does not, because you were an elected member. Oh, sorry. Does that violate FERPA? Posting student information. You were the one that is choosing to access that remote location. I have not heard any discrepancy of that violating FERPA at all, because that is a remote access point. I lived out in the country. I lived about 30, 45 minutes away from my school. I didn't want to have to drive into all my meetings. I have a gate that goes around my entire house, so you can't even access my house. I had to open my gate, make sure that the agenda was posted on my wooden gate outside, so that way it was accessible during those 3 days, because I didn't open the gate for those 3 days. So I had to be outside, had to be able to allow them to come all the way up to my door. Thank goodness no one ever did, but it was there. Like, they needed to know. My address was literally on the agenda, because that's where I was at. So I have not, I mean, I can consult and come back, but I am 95% positive. I would actually say 99% positive that does not violate FERPA at all. You were an elected official. You chose to access that remote location. All right, another one. Go for it.
Are there any limitations as to what the public can access on my device?
Are there any limitations to what the public can access on your device? They are only accessing that meeting. They're not going through like your computer. It's just the fact that you are utilizing that screen. They get to utilize that screen too, and your microphone if they choose to do public comment. Good? Oh, sorry. One more.
Will we be able to review the recordings later?
Yes. So will you be able to review the recordings later? Yes. Recordings will be posted to our YouTube page. And we'll try and get the links out. I will probably be sending out the link to the recording to all the student body presidents, advisors, and student trustees next week sometime. Go ahead. Yeah. Then I would tell them to take you off their website, or give, like, you have to tell them, like, hey, my agenda comes out 4 days prior and it needs to be up there, or we are violating the law. I'm sure they will work around any violation of the law to be able to put that on there. I would definitely tell them we would be in violation of Brown Act. So sorry, I didn't repeat the question again. The question was, if my campus makes me turn in any documents 2 weeks in advance to post onto the website, like what do I have to do to be able to post the agenda? And it's either you make your agenda 2 weeks in advance of that meeting, which kind of limits you to what you can put on there, because if anything else comes up, or you tell them that you must comply to Brown Act, and I need to post this to the website, or you just have them take you off their website. But I wouldn't do that. Like you maybe have them put a link to your own website on their website, so that way it takes them to a whole different page where you can have your agenda posted and everything like that. Go ahead, Clement.
So there's one last question. This is kind of important. So it says, so anything that can be an agenda item cannot be discussed within a group chat with voting members, even just mentioning the item.
So yes. So here's the thing. It's not anything that's going to be anything that's going to be an agenda item, can it not be discussed in a group chat, even just mentioning it? The answer is yes and no, because yes, you do not want to talk about any agenda item that will be actionable, all right? This is anything that you will take action on. If it is an informative, fine. You're not going to take action on, so you're not persuading anybody to vote in your favor, all right? If it is actionable, once that action item is spoken of, stop it. So mentioning it is one thing, but getting into a discussion is another. So once it's mentioned, hey, we shouldn't talk about that here, end of discussion. All right? So good, 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 good. Oh, and one more. All right, last one, because we really got to go. Yeah, that's a great question. So any tips and tricks about Robert's rules when handling a heated debate? One, you're the chair, you're completely in charge, right? So I would definitely, lay the gavel down and just say, hey, you need to make your comments to the chair, because usually heated debates are happening between two members, not between you, right? You as the chair. So make sure that once it starts to get heated, you bring them back in and talk to me, and that's one of the reasons why I said set up those community agreements. So that way, once they're in violation of the community agreements, hey, you're in violation of the community agreements. If you cannot do that, then we're taking you out of the community for right now, because you cannot be here. We cannot have you as part of this meeting because you are violating what we are, what we have already established as the guidelines to this meeting. Does that help? A little bit? I can get into more. We can talk about it later, but I know we're really out of time. Is that good? We're good? All right. Thank you, everybody. I appreciate it. I will be around all weekend, so if you have any other questions.